With the mandated Medicaid disenrollment process beginning, Governor Bel Edwards' administration has proposed millions in engagement strategies with enrollees on the program who need to verify their information. And according to a report from the LA Illuminator, the state is looking to spend $106.6 million in federal funding from the current budget cycle and a combination of state and federal money totaling $89.2 million in the next budget cycle to verify the status of thousands on Medicaid rolls. And this comes as federal COVID protections end in April that have kept people eligible for the program regardless of income. Now, Louisiana must reevaluate whether those currently on the rolls meet the standard Medicaid requirements.
The single most important thing is make sure that Louisiana Medicaid has your latest contact information so that we can redetermine eligibility, keep you on Medicaid if you're eligible, but get you coverage somewhere else if you're not.
About 42% of Louisiana residents receive Medicaid benefits, and LDH estimates that about 35,000 will no longer qualify. Notification efforts have already started with pink letters in the mail, social media campaigns, billboards, and coordination with nonprofits and healthcare providers. So make sure you update your status with Louisiana Medicaid as soon as you can to ensure that you have coverage.